Welcome to BGSU Learning Commons Lunch and Learn video tutorials. I'm your host Tim, and today we'll be talking about virtualization through the powerful tool of Vagrant. What you want to go ahead and do first is install Vagrant by going to vagrantup.com/downloads. These links will be provided in the description below. We won't go into how to install it as we already installed it to save some time. But what you will need to do is you'll need to select the distribution that you're currently running, as well as install VirtualBox, which is provided by Oracle, which is used by Vagrant to create the VirtualBox. What Vagrant does is it acts as a wrapper for the VirtualBox so that we can provision the virtual machine how we want it to be. We do this by creating the first command, which is vagrant init Ubuntu 16-16.04, which is basically saying that we want to initialize a Vagrant box to run on the operating system Ubuntu 16.04. What this does is it'll place a Vagrant file in our directory, which, would you look at that? There's a Vagrant file in the directory. If we go ahead and look at the Vagrant file, we can see that we currently have multiple ways of configuring this virtual machine. The first thing that I want to do is I want to allow my virtual machine to connect to the outside world, which we do by uncommenting this snippet of code right here, which basically says that the forwarding port of this virtual machine will be on port 80, but the host will be our actual physical machine on port 8080, which is acting as the HTTP port that is used by the machine. Next, we want to talk about how you can use shell scripting to provision your virtual machine, which is done in this section right here. These are commands that you can run on your physical machine, but since we want to save some time, I could say apt get install. For example, I could have the machine, or I can have Vagrant install Git, but in this case, Git is already installed on Ubuntu 16.04, so I won't need that. But I'll show you how this command right here, apt-get-update, will automatically update the system without us having to run the command. Here we can have the machine set up using its own specific IP address on a private network. We could also have a shared directory between the local machine, like our physical machine, as well as the Vagrant box, which allows real-time updating of our files that we place on our local machine so that our virtual machine can receive the same files in real time. And then if we go ahead and exit out of this, we go and then we do our second command, sorry, which is vagrant up, which creates and configures guest machines according to our Vagrant file. This is the most important command in Vagrant because it's essentially creates our machine while provisioning it to how we want it to be. Now this will run through the download process, which includes updating and using the command that I added, or not added, but in the shell scripting section. So at this point, what we wanted to do was save you guys some time, and we skipped forward past the updates that follow Vagrant up. What you're able to do now is SSH into your virtual machine by typing vagrant SSH. This establishes a connection between your local and physical machine. Sorry, your local and virtual machine. And would you look at that? We're in our VirtualBox. At this point, we want to take the time to show you guys an example of what you can do in this VirtualBox by pulling a snippet of code by going to our BGSU Lunch and Learn GitHub account. And by going to the virtualization repository, we can begin to fork it. If you guys at this point don't know what's going on, feel free to look at the videos that are related with Git and GitHub, and that will walk you through exactly what I'm doing. By forking it, we can get the access to the file that we are trying to change. And we got this, and we take it to the local machine. And if you look at that, we have our directory. If we see it, cd into it, we can see that we have this index file, which we'll be changing, which our instructor Blade will be talking about here in a second.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this file to some use because we have this VirtualBox up and running, and if you remember in the Vagrant file we did some stuff with Apache and we did some port forwarding. So what Apache is simply a software that manages HTTP requests, or essentially web requests that say I want this website, this web page from this server. And in the port forwarding we said we're going to map port 80, which handles the HTTP request, to port 8080 on our physical box. So we're going to leverage that right now to put a simple web page onto our virtual server. So we're going to use this index file that we had earlier, and we're going to change our directory to where the Apache files are. Now Apache automatically installs an index.html file, but we're going to replace that. So we're going to use the copy command. I'm going to say we want to use the index file from the Lunch and Learn Virtualization, and we're going to go ahead and put it in this current directory. Now, this needs to be done using the special command sudo. If you are not familiar with this, go ahead and type it just as is. We'll be talking about Linux administration in a future video series. For right now, just enter this command exactly as is, and you'll see we still have our index file, but it is the one that we downloaded from GitHub. If you have any doubts, you can go ahead and check the file in your the file you downloaded in your home directory, or you can go to GitHub itself. But for right now, we're going to pull up a browser window, and we're going to say I'm going to go to localhost on port 8080, just like the port forwarding we did earlier, and you'll see that we have that web page. Now this might seem really simple, but this is actually a really powerful concept because it shows that we can have a virtual server running, and we can test all sorts of applications on it, from simple web pages to these gigantic applications that are running databases and back-end frameworks and front-end frameworks and who knows what other tools. We can test all of that on our local machine before pushing it into our remote environment. So this is really the power of Vagrant for the local aspect of things. And in the next video in this series, we're going to be talking about how to put your code actually out there on a remote location in the real world. Look forward to talking to you then.